Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be hopping in the boat with Brian Brosdahl, and he's going to share a bunch of tips that will help you put more walleyes in the boat during the middle of summer, during the dog days when a lot of people struggle. So without further ado, let's jump right in. He's going to start out talking about the presentations that he likes to use during the dog days.
I have all different types of approaches, and of course one of the more popular one nowadays with forward viewing is a Northland light bite bobber with a tungsten jig and a weight to get down there quick, because we're finding out the walleyes never sit still. They keep swimming and swimming. So throwing a bobber on fish forward viewing is really popular, and tungsten gets you down quick. The other thing I've been using, you know, being in the industry, I get prototypes, and there's the pitch and puppet. Pitch it out, let it hit the sand. I double hop. I walk the dog, so rod's going left to right, and rip it and pause, and when it hits the sand, the walleyes will scoop it up. And some really cool colors. I'm excited about this for 2024, and I've caught a ton of fish on it. I tie a loop knot or use a quick clip, but the loop knot works real fine, and I bump up the size of the fluorocarbon leader to about 12 to 16 pound test because of zebra mussels. So there's another approach. That's approach number 2. And then drop shots are ever popular with sort of forward viewing, because we're finding out that the walleyes aren't on the bottom. So most of the time they're about 4 or 5 feet up, but I'll check and I'll adjust on the fly. But I have a little tungsten sinker, line that goes to a hook, and the hook that I use is actually on a finger of line. We find that using a traditional drop shot, that you're hooking fish barely in the very tip of the lip, but with this you get them in the inside more. And you can add beads, pill floats. I call this the stealth rig. Been using it for many years. And just add a leech and pitch it out. If you're using leeches on a drop shot or stealth rig, I'll pick a medium size. These are some big jumbos, and they get harder to get. Don't worry about that. All you need are smalls and mediums when you're throwing drop shots. But make sure you're at the fish's level. And right here I got this one set at 4 feet, because that's where they're at today, 4 feet off the bottom. Always have a traditional jig. And I'll use tungsten. Fish is fast, tight, and the profile is a third smaller than a traditional lead jig. Great colors in this Northland tungsten jig, and I loop knot that. That loop's a little bit big, but it works really well. You get more action out of that jig. I never go anywhere without a jig. And then plastics. Plastics are a very key fixture in summer. I'll use a paddle tail. There's an eye candy paddle tail, and that's a paddle shed that works really well. It's super soft, porous, indestructible. The porous part allows you to add scent to it, and then try different color heads and different color tails. That's been fantastic, and I won't leave home without my Northland jig crawler. And that purple core chartreuse, and then match a good head on there. I have a tungsten jig head on there. That is so soft and moves through the water so nice. And just jig it, little light hops and a pause. Or sometimes don't pause. If there's algae on the bottom, just keep reeling. Treat it like a lure and you'll catch fish. I had one survive 2 weeks, the same jig, same piece of plastic, 2 weeks, caught fish every day on it, just had to retie the knot until a pike bit me off. They're so durable, it's amazing. So there's my multifaceted approach to summer walleye fishing. I don't go down easy. I'm going to try to get them.
Next up, Brian is going to talk about where you should be looking for walleyes during the middle of summer, some key locations for catching them during the dog days.
A lot of people ask, what depth do I fish walleyes and how do I target them in the summertime? Well, weeds are always good. In the summer, they can get out of the sun. The sun is bright. Like today it's bright. They're going to be buried in the weeds or on the weed edge. Some will go deeper, but not all. In the past, we used to fish walleyes deeper in the summer, the dog days, and now we're finding that they like to be shallow in clear water. Weeds are very important, good rock structures, and lots of food. But then what do you do when the weeds have algae or slime on them? You stay off the bottom, so I have drop shot rigs, and just reel your plastics faster, slip bobbers, jig aggressively, and just keep going through fish. If they don't bite, go to the next school of fish. With forward viewing, we're finding out that there's a lot more fish in the lake than you think, and they never stop moving. So that's why I use a lot of plastics. But the key depths that I've seen, no matter what, in the last several summers with clear water and bright days, It's right around that 10 to 12 feet. The fish seem to be in there all the time. Some days they'll be up in 5 feet of water on the inside of the weed line, but most of the time they're on the outer weed line and they're right on the edge where they can escape into the open lake. So that's one of the key things, is 10 feet of water, or real shelfy areas. In some lakes look like a quarry. If you drain them, they have a lot of steep edges and drops and rocks. Those lakes, anything facing the big open water is going to have fish. Just remember, before summer comes, and actually summer doesn't really happen till the third week of June. The actual calendar date is in the third week of June. So basically July, August, all the way to September can still be warm. The fish are facing the open mud because they've been gathering and eating mayflies, midgeflies, stoneflies, dragonfly nymphs, all these hatches that come out of the mud. And now they're turning to crayfish, which is what I like. When they start chasing crayfish, they're chasing, and they're going to hit aggressive, instinctive, reactive striking things, baits like plastics with a lot of color and movement and soft. Bright colors work really well. The pitch and puppet, the jig crawler works super well. And just ripping them, moving them fast, it seems like you really have to get the speed up. And if you want to jig these and just back troll, just bump up your speed, not to a mile an hour, not to 1.2, get it to a mile and a half, and just kind of rip it. What you're doing is you're trying to keep it away from the fish, and you're going to find they're going to hit it hard and hook themselves really well. So instinctive reactive strikes, flashy colors, fast movement creates bites. And you know, this is also a time when leeches get hard to get, and boy do they love leeches this time of year on slip bobbers and jigged. And you don't need big ones, just jigging sized leeches work extremely well. And if you can get big minnows, this is the start of the big minnow run, because all of your hatchlings have gotten bigger, and so instead of being 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, you got minnows that are 2, 3, 4 inches. And I am not afraid to use an 8-inch creek chub, and I do have them with, and that's the key, is to have a little bit of everything and be ready to hit them hard. So I wash a lot of lures, and I love getting to use prototypes like this beautiful pitch and puppet, and they come in with some really cool colors. But 10 feet of water, give or take, is a magic depth. And on days when the pressure is low or a little bit high, they might drift out to 13 to 17 feet. And they're only on deeper structures on the zebra mussel lakes, it seems, just during bug hatches. And then again in the fall, when the water starts mixing, they'll make their big run up in September and October into areas that still have weeds and still have a lot of bait fish. But when the bait fish drops, they follow them down.
One of the best ways to beat a bad bite during the dog days of summer is going after hours and chasing them at night. So here's a few tips from Bro if you choose to go that route.
If you have the time or you're on vacation, go at night, and it's a different world. I see it. Walleyes are starting to rise up on the bars. They're moving around. They're out in the open. Trolling crankbaits is one way, but there's a whole bunch of ways to catch fish at night. Leeches on a slip bobber, pitching plastics and jigging them in a twitchy fashion where they could actually feel it on their lateral lines. Nighttime fishing is when the walleyes get to, you know, they have light sensitive eyes. Nighttime fishing is when nighttime fishing is a time when walleyes can roam free of that heavy, intense summer sun, and you'd be surprised how good it can be. And there's quite a crew across northern Minnesota that only fish at night and do extremely well. A lot of big fish. The whole lake wakes up because most of your walleyes are feeding at night. I like to fish during the day most of the time, but at night it's a little bit easier and the fish are more active, and that's when they feed actively. And as the morning breaks, early in the morning, they start dispersing and finding their edges of the bars, laying in depressions, going back to the weeds. Nighttime, they're out in the open and ready to eat. So you could jig, you could spin, you could use crankbaits, and I'll use a rumble crank. A rumble bug works super well at night. And try different colors. And metallics are always good at night. If we have a clear night and there's a little bit of a moon phase going on, metallics are good. But for the most part, don't let that rod sit in the holder. Jig it a little bit. You'll get more bites.
One of the biggest problems that folks deal with when they're fishing in the middle of summer or spring or fall, any time of year, is should I stay or should I go? And Bro is gonna hit on that topic right now.
You'll find schools of fish, big schools of walleye sometimes, especially with today's technology and forward viewing. But you'll notice after you catch 2 or 3 fish that it's hard to catch anymore. This is a great time to move. I like to, use an analogy that if you're a doctor with a patient, don't take more than a pint of blood. So taking little samples here and there of the walleyes out of the schools, you'll get more fish. Just keep moving. If you don't have those schools, that's another thing, but I like to find a bunch of schools of fish and then I work through them. And especially in the tournament times when I was pre-fishing in tournaments, I would find the fish and then come back and fish them the next day. If you fish your way through a lake, especially big bodies of water, I've been on Lake Oahe, Erie, if you fish your way through spots, you'll never get through very many spots. So I like to find the fish and then go back and fish them later. And what I do is just take a sample. Don't take too much blood, you'll kill the patient. So 1, 2, 3, some spots have hundreds of fish. You could take maybe 4 or 5 or 6, catch that many, and then you gotta move. So that's the whole thing in summer. Not all the fish in the school will bite unless you have perfect weather, perfect moon phase, sun phase. If you have the barometers perfect, if you got a front coming in, those days they'll bite really well, but you still don't catch all of them. And I think sometimes people with technology now, they see all the fish and they want to stay on the fish. Well, you're going to get to a point where they're not going to bite anymore. So when they slow down, time to move.
Well, that's about all we got for you in this video. Special thanks to Brian for sharing a bunch of good information, sharing his whole system for this time of year. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something, make sure to hit that little red subscribe button down below because we have a lot more awesome content coming in the future. And until then, we will see you in the next one.